I am here today with Sarah Arseneault from Sarnia.
But homes, as we said, spring market, they were averaging about 23 days in March to sell. Now, when we had this in February and I presented, they were close to 30. So that's all coming back down, and the average time to sell in April were about 20 days. And even though that this is all becoming really fast, the number of active listings is still over 200% from last year. So we are still seeing a lot more listings, even though things are starting to sell faster as well.
Okay, so there's more out in the market?
Mm-hmm.
Right
So I have been finding, especially with my listings, people are obviously a lot pickier, the buyers. It's more of a buyer's market.
Good morning, everyone. Beautiful day today. My name is Carina Guzman, also known as the Land Development Queen. I am here today with Sarah Arseneault from Sarnia. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Carina. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to be here. Excited to dive into, I guess, the spring market here in Sarnia, Ontario.
Exactly. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the spring market and all the trends happening in various locations around Ontario. So I don't know much about the Sarnia market, so I'm really looking forward to hearing all of the info that you got for us today.
Awesome. Well, we're in for a treat because last month we couldn't figure out scheduling with the host. So I've kind of done a 2-in-1 for anyone who does log on and watch consistently. And that gives a really good snapshot as we're looking at March and April. So kind of veering out of that winter market to the spring market. So awesome. Super exciting to show you the stats, and we can get started.
Yeah, let's go.
So as mentioned, I am a realtor with eXp Realty, and I work with investors in the Sarnia and Lambton region. We are going to be looking at some stats from March and April. It was some great months in terms of multifamily and investments. We only usually focus on the Sarnia market just because Lambton would be the counties, which there are investment opportunities. I'm happy to show anyone. Please DM me or call me if you have questions about that. But Sarnia is just the biggest city and has kind of the most investment opportunity in terms of multifamily and commercial and things like that. So for the purpose of this presentation, we generally stick to the Sarnia market. Now, I just like to start off with a few little tidbits about where we're at in the market. So in Sarnia area, the median for March 2023 was about 454,900, which for anyone who's been following this channel for a long time is definitely much lower than it was, a year prior, where it was well up over 500, closer to the 550 mark. But obviously, as we all know, and I'm sure you've talked about, Carina, with others, the interest rate has kind of definitely affected that. Yeah. But as we got into April, even though rates were technically the same, we are seeing a trend upward in price, which, I mean, we can say it's the spring market or people are getting used to the interest rates, but it actually jumped up to 470,000 being the median, which is a pretty significant jump, I guess, in terms of no interest rate changes in the market compared to what we have been seeing.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's also because of the spring, right? Like in April, we kind of see that as a trend.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I mean, other things are showing that as well. So like in February there, the homes were selling for about 96% of their listing price. Then we got into March and it's 98. And now in April, it's 99. So we are seeing that trending, people are getting off. I remember even talking about on this channel in December how it was pretty slow, in real estate. People got that winter, the holiday, and as we got closer and closer to the nice weather, we are starting to see more of that spring market, which I guess during COVID, I mean, I'm sure you saw it too, but the spring market was all year, it didn't really exist.
It was crazy.
Yeah, it's like Christmas, sure, let's go get those. But we are starting to get back to more of those trends of the spring market, which is good for our sellers. But it also, I think, should show all you guys, the new investors as well. I mean, a deal is a deal, but don't be afraid when those winter months come and those times are lower, when you can go in and maybe grab an even better deal.
That's good advice. We used to always do that as well, is just not shop around as much, because we did a lot of buy and hold when we first began our real estate journey. And that was one of the key factors, is let's not go and, when everybody's buying, be the one in line. You want to kind of be just out of it and go in the times when people are more inside the house, not looking for deals, so that's really good advice. That has actually really worked well for us. And
I mean, it doesn't mean you can't find deals now. They definitely are, especially for motivated sellers. But yeah, I feel like we just can't drop the ball. We have to, keep looking. And I mean, oftentimes when people are scared, that's when, like recessions or anything, the best businesses, the best deals are apparent. So I think we just have to keep trudging through. And I guess we'll see where interest rates go as well, because that could change the summer market too for everyone.
Right.
But homes, as we said, spring market, they were averaging about 23 days in March to sell. Now, when we had this in February and I presented, they were close to 30. So that's all coming back down, and the average time to sell in April were about 20 days. So that's all coming right back down. I mean, it's 7 days last year. But that is really coming down quite sharply from the 30 days we were at in the winter time. And even though that this is all becoming really fast, the number of active listings is still over 200% from last year. So we are still seeing a lot more listings, even though things are starting to sell faster as well. So the demand is still there.
Okay, so there's more out in the market?
So I have been finding, especially with my listings, people are obviously a lot pickier, the buyers. It's more of a buyer's market, but it's not even because they're hoarding their money or, but it's just like there's more to see, right? So it's like, well, let's go look at the other 5 houses we can see versus, like right now, I think there's about 300 active homes in, the Sarnia Lambton area, which, I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot from Ottawa or a big city, but, that's a lot more than when we had 80 active listings, peak COVID, where just there wasn't that many listings and they would sell very fast, right? So people have options now anyways to look at.
Okay, that's good to know. So that may be a factor to help in the negotiation aspect of it.
It definitely can, especially, I mean, as an agent, I see it all the time, but you're able to provide comparisons to another agent when you're discussing deals, or to the seller. It's more like they have those comparisons. They could actually go see them if they wanted to, compared to during COVID, where it was just
crazy. Bananas.
Shambles, right? It's like, oh, there's nothing. This is it. Take it or leave it. Spend more. So that's kind of what we're seeing, which is good news for a balanced market. But at the same time, we are starting to see kind of that multiple offers in certain cases. Just dealt with one last week for a client. I mean, not insane amount over, and often there's still conditions compared to a year ago, but they are starting in our small area even to make a revival. So that's interesting to see.
Yeah.
Now this was in March, so just to look at this, the new listing. So it was pretty consistent. I mean, even during COVID, there was a bit less, but new listings anyways. There was just, about 225 in March of 2023. Which is definitely up from prior, 2019, where it was just over 150. Now in April, it's went down. So even though it's the spring market, we are seeing less listings. So new listings to market in April were under 200. So that is definitely something where even though we have 200% more in, like median over time, April has been a little bit different and would like to see some more listings coming up. And maybe that's also to equate why things are selling quicker, because there's less out there than there has been in the winter months. So
Right.
we'll see where that goes, but hopeful for the balanced market this summer. Looking at sales in March were pretty low actually, especially for the amount of new listings. There was over 200. So there was about 125 sales in March. So that was still not peak, but we're up to about 150 in April. So things are still all over the place. I mean, if you look at 2021, peak of COVID. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I mean. And I mean, it's pretty, we see it here too. So, I mean, the new listings, COVID peak 2020 were pretty low. And then the next summer, or next April, it spiked. Everyone was buying anything they could. So, I mean, I think this is what I'm seeing in our market and other markets, but it's pretty across the board.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So
I always wondered, of all these people that went off in 2021 and overbid or, won the bidding wars from all of these properties, are they now, like 2 years later, the ones putting it up on the market with all the interest rates gone up, That's, I think, as investors, we're always thinking about that. Like, are these opportunities going to come up, right? Because there may be a position where some of these are going to be on like quick sale or fire sale, just because they're not willing to hold on to them anymore.
Yeah, and I have seen that. Even a sale a few months ago for an investor. They bought, in 2021, put a bunch of money into the home. And at one point, they come to the point where they need to refinance it, and now it's not appraised at enough, and now we're forced to sell and cut losses, right? But it's hard because it's the weighing of at what point do you cut your loss. But I think even though it's a tough scenario, it's kind of like stocks. Like, yes, it could rebound, but unlike a stock, a house still has fees as you go, right? So, I mean, you still have to deal with tenants. You still have to deal with taxes, maintenance. So at some point, you really have to realize, and hopefully as an investor, it's not your first one. You have multiple, and it's like, well, I've won here, cut my losses here, and we'll keep moving on. So, I mean, it can happen to the best of anyone, but I have definitely started seeing it, especially as the interest rates have shifted. And, maybe someone only had a mortgage for a year or two before they had to refinance, but it'll definitely come more and more as we head into, the closer to the 3 to 5 years, right? From those low interest rates and that 2021, I think, where and even more so, I think, in the cities where the prices are higher.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When those 5-year mortgages are coming due for renewal.
Yeah, I think I saw there it was an RBC stat, I think, that it was like 75% of people that have variable mortgages have already hit their trigger rate, like causing an increase in their payments, right? And it says about 40% increase. So, it's pretty substantial for a lot of people. So it'll be interesting to see where the market goes based on how even the next announcement from the Bank of Canada comes as inflation was up again, I guess.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's all we can do. And then that's what we said. It's not a crystal ball, right? So all we can do is, like you said, really as investors, try and make sure not even cutting our losses, but making sure we have plan A, plan B, plan C before we're getting into something.
Exactly. Multiple exits. That's one thing I always
professional opinions. If you don't know the area, like, you need to be an expert in your field, right? Like, or obtain all the knowledge you can before jumping into something.
Absolutely.
There's always that level of just jump in, but you want to have a cushion to fall on a back.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, this is Sarnia. I know, Carina, you are new to the Sarnia market, so I like to do this. And for those that have watched before, this is nothing new to you, but I do like to kind of go over it. So if we zoomed in on the map, this is Sarnia. It's about 75,000 people. There is a lot of blue collar industry jobs that that pay very well. So a lot from construction to, we have a lot of oil and gas, plastic production. So a lot of big corporations as well, which gives the blue collar jobs plus those, engineering, those higher up jobs that people do move to and need rentals as well, if they're getting a job and coming from out of country or Toronto area where they need to work and live, and they'd like a rental for at least a year or two. So good tenant base as well, generally in the Sarnia area. Now, Point Edward there, you will see that. I mean, for the locals, they wouldn't consider that Sarnia. Point Edward would be where the 402 meets the Blue Water Bridge, which you see kind of in the bottom, that it goes to Michigan, so the USA. Mm-hmm. So Point Edward's a really nice community. I kind of leave it off of this because although there are rentals there, there is really very, very minimal multifamily, and it's not really because of the price point a place that investors would look immediately to buy, their investments. So I leave that off. I mean, we definitely, if someone really wants that area, we can find them something, but it's not kind of the first place someone would go to look. So I just like to focus on the rest of Sarnia. Now, looking at this, we will look at March and April stats, but this one is just March. So if we're talking about the zones of Sarnia where, especially during COVID, people flocked to, was the South End there in the bottom left. The South End was a very blue-collar area that needed revitalized. So during COVID, especially with out-of-town investors flocking to Sarnia, this was a huge area where price points were still low. Like 2 years ago, I've seen things even for $100,000 3 years ago in that area that needed maintenance work. There's a lot of duplexes, even triplexes, homes that have been transferred over time. So this was a really big area, and even in the last 2 years was the area where, locals are seeing houses going for $400,000, thinking that's wild. That's crazy amount for that end of town. Like for that end of town, for that area, that's crazy. But out of towners, a huge jump from 200,000, like the similar homes years prior.
Yeah.
So this was great for the community. A lot of first-time home buyers were forced there as well, just because of price point. So that's great. But now we are seeing that one level out as interest rates are changing. Still could be opportunity there, but I just caution to really work with a professional and know your numbers. Just because I have had even other realtors message saying, I found a great off-market deal in this area. I'm not from this area. I'm going to buy it as cheap. I'm like, yeah, but do you know the area? Do you know what that all entails in terms of long-term and rentability and rent prices? So oftentimes, especially people from out of town, look at this area and say, that's so cheap, I have to buy it, without knowing. And not saying it's dangerous, like guns, gangs, things like that, but it's just lower end than maybe the rest of the investor areas.
Right, yeah. No, I agree with that a lot. Like you want to have some, especially if you don't know the area, you want to have somebody like boots on the ground, somebody that knows it very well. Like every city has that, right? Nice areas, bad areas. So you want to know that up front, especially if you're thinking of buying it as an investment.
Yes, especially who you're renting to, right? Like, will the family want to be there based on the school zone or, things like that. So definitely an area. Yes, I say investors, you can invest there, but tread with caution in terms of know what you're getting into and don't be buying without any details and knowledge. Yeah. Sherwood, which is to the right there on the bottom, is a great rental area, lots of townhouses. It's also to the other side of that 40 highway is the college. So a lot of international students like to rent in this area, and even out of town students because of how close it is. So this is a really great rental area. Prices can vary a lot just because you go from townhouse to detached homes. So sometimes the numbers are skewed here to know year over year, just because, if only 20 homes are listed and it's different 1 year from the next, what's being listed, it's really hard to narrow in. But generally, even though this looks South End, this has always held a high price point. So people do like this area. It's a good rental area and community as well.
Nice. But it's also gone down, I see.
Oh yeah. So and that's where I'm saying. So some of this, it's hard because in Sherwood specifically there. So in 2022, the average sale was 460 and now it's 388. We don't know, or I guess I could dive into it, but it'd be very in depth of how many detached versus townhouses we're selling in this time. But I will say even the townhouses, you know, where a year ago they might have went for 400. Now they are selling closer to 300, like that 320. So they have came down a lot, but for those townhouses, that was a lot of money, you know, a year ago, in multiple offers that they were getting 400,000 for, you know, an 80 style townhouse. So I think that one is pretty representative of March, you know, coming down 16%. But yeah, good area, but it has definitely come down with the interest rates for sure.
Yeah.
Now, Central Sarnia, this is where you would have all your, you know, your malls, your businesses, your downtown, lots of subdivisions, different communities. There's definitely, obviously, some are more rentable than others in terms of getting into the market in these areas. There was definitely a huge drop in this area, and I'm assuming it's from a few higher price or lower price sales, since we did see less new listings in March. Because it's saying it's came down about 36%, which I do agree it's came down quite a bit, but I think there might have been a few higher price sales, you know, a year prior that might have skewed this a little bit.
Yeah, all of the craziness that happened. It's probably more like I'm assuming, maybe you can tell me a little bit more, Sarah, the 332,000 mark is probably more representative of what the traditional or regular average price would be in this area versus the 500, where it was probably when, you know, all the COVID craziness happened.
Correct. And I mean, there are a few, but they don't sell many houses because people don't move from them. You know, there are a few newer communities in this area, but for the most part, people were, you know, even in 2019, they were buying these older 70s home, you know, 1.5 stories for rentals, you know, and they were 330 or less. So yeah, I agree that they were generally, Central has a lot of the 60s, 50s style homes that have been updated over time, nice areas, but the 518 definitely, as people got a little crazy in those times, it did get quite high. And then, yeah, like I didn't mention it before, but yeah, the South. So while we're going over it anyways, it's saying it's down about 27%, which I do believe. I mean, again, maybe some of these average homes that made it to 280, maybe there was a lot of homes that did need work that they were selling. But yeah, you see there where the average was 380, like that is high, right? Like for that area, or was. And you were seeing, I mean, they were nicely renovated, but you were seeing nicely renovated 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home with a small garage going for that 384, right, which was quite high for this area. And it didn't make sense to crunch the numbers to get rental for a single family home for that price, you know, even a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. Because you were
the rent prices are high, but not that high.
Yeah, exactly. So you wouldn't even cover, like at that price, the rental.
No, correct. But at that time, I think who was buying it was either first-time home buyers or people coming that couldn't afford the other areas because they were pushed up to 518. You know, wherever it was, they were pushed so much higher. Now, North End, Sarnia, this is a beautiful area. If you ever came down to vacation, like lovely to drive through, you know, the houses on the water, you know, so obviously not all of them are rental homes, but this is a great area if you can afford it or find a great deal, because people want to live on the North End because it's great school districts. You can deem higher rent, you know, it's just a safe area. There's nice private grocery stores, you know, like just that kind of higher caliber. That being said, you can drive from South End to North End in 10 minutes, you know, so everything's oh yeah, there's no traffic jams. That's what I mean. So let's put this into perspective. It's great. I've lived in Toronto before, and I'm like, man, I'm waiting an hour and a half to drive, you know, in traffic. I drove in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was thinking that actually I was just in Toronto and it's nuts over there. So when you say 10 minutes, it's like, wow, that's like unheard of here.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so nice, especially with a family. Like I know I have had a lot of clients that even weren't investors per se, but during the last few years have migrated down for pricing. And they're like, this is so nice, like with family. Like it's just a little bit more room to breathe, especially with young children. So pros and cons, it depends what you're used to, but it is nice as well as an investor if you're coming down or have to come down. Once you get past that Toronto traffic, it's a pretty straightforward drive, right? It's straightforward. You can get around, it's just easy. Or even to find trades, because it is such a trade heavy community. There's often lots of connections you can find to help you, do jobs or have trustworthy repairmen to help or women in the field. So North End, I mean, we have seen this one dip quite a bit, but overall in March it was pretty good, about 7%. So the average price was sitting at $489.
Yeah, that's pretty steady actually. It's not such a huge drop.
Yeah, in some months,
the
in the beginning we saw it, in the beginning we saw it, especially in those months, like March wasn't bad, but like January, where it got really wild in 2022, like January to January of this year was pretty big drop, but overall now it has remained pretty steady. These are the April numbers, so we don't have to go over the areas again, but we have seen like even Central again. If you look at it, so Central was 36% down and now it's 29% down. So we have seen again, like Central went from 531 to 375. So that one is definitely an area that has mellowed and leveled. Still get great rent in those areas, and there have been quite a bit of multifamily homes. So if we can find you a deal in that area for multifamily, great area to have multifamily homes. It's more right now just the hassle of I had a listing there. We sold it. We ended up getting cash for keys in terms of for the new buyer. We worked something out. But those deals are things that I'm seeing my clients do more and more because the numbers don't make sense for what the seller wants for the home with the current rental, what the current tenants are paying.
Right.
So that's an area where there's great places. There's lots on the market even for multifamily, but it's trying to work the numbers out because as you know how impactful the rental monthly rent is compared to what a seller's going to get.
Yeah, exactly. So is this something, Sarah, that you would help your clients? Is the whole, that caught my attention, the cash for keys thing. Is this something that you normally kind of put yourself in and help out the investors do?
Yeah, I can. It depends on the route. So in the past, like I have had clients that have bought it and went through the process themselves, like with a paralegal or however they want to do it, where it's legal and everyone wins. So they were happy with that. We kind of negotiated it before. In this case, we were representing the seller side, so a little bit different. And we kept having buyers say the rents don't make sense. They don't make sense. Right. And then finally we found someone that did want it, and we kind of proposed, what if we can get the basement tenant out? Good tenant, great tenant, was paying pretty close to market rent, but even a few $100 matters, right? So worked out a deal where they would leave and cash for keys and everyone was happy. So we helped them bring that deal together, just kind of with that more investor focus on the sale, to try and make anything work. Because that's big pet peeve of mine when, it's like, well, these numbers work. And it's like, well, are you going to, let's be creative, like, let's make this come together for everyone. Yeah. So I think that's the difference with an investor or even an investor-minded realtor is, are you willing to make it work so everyone wins, or is this just black and white?
Yeah, exactly. And if you are focused on investors, that's what you want to do, right? You need to do some little tweaks and changes like that so that the deal makes sense for them. Correct. While still, like you see, if your sellers have this property on the market for so long, you don't want that either, right? So correct. I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I focus on here in Sarnia. and what a lot of, I guess, realtors on this channel do. But it goes both ways, right? Like both parties need to kind of look at it in a different way. So that's would be my advice currently for the Central Sarnia market, is find those deals and find ones that we can make work.
Right.
Now, South Sarnia, I think you can see like it was mellowed from April to April, like the price points, and I'd say that is the average of what's selling there now. You know, like you can get a good house, you know, 330,000 range. More of the fair pricing, then it's listed at 330 and it's selling for 400 because of multiple offers. So we are seeing that one mellow out. Sherwood, again, it went up 4% apparently, but you know, I think that's just more mellowed out. Like that's more the average of the detached homes and semi homes kind of combined in value. So I would say that is pretty accurate as well. That's usually a steady market. And then North End, you know, some higher price points sold, but you know, it went from 634 to 564, which is about 11%. So, I mean, also pretty relative for where the interest rates have went from last April to this April. So overall, I think the numbers have been more stable with the spring market compared to, you know, like all the negatives we saw in the March market, which it just wasn't quite there yet. So with the picked up market and maybe more multiple offers, it has kind of mellowed out.
Yeah. And it makes sense with everything going on.
Yeah.
You know, so that makes sense. Normally you're seeing that up trend in like February, because
I know
are getting ready. They're like, okay, it's spring. But yeah, with all the interest rates going up and all the insecurity around what is going on, I think people are just waiting.
I know my investors, even within the last, you know, month or two with we're going to hold rates. They're like, okay, it's go time now. You know, they're holding and we think they're going to go up again, you know, in a few months.
Right.
Let's buy now. Let's, you know, like, let's plan for this. Let's do this. Or I talk to them. And if I do this, I can get another unit for this, you know, like just really working with their finance team now, trying to jump in the game. So
exactly.
I think we're seeing this all over the place. So it'll be interesting to see where the interest rates go this month coming up. And I mean, I'm heading to, which this video will probably be posted after, so maybe I'll see some of the people there, but a multifamily conference in Toronto this weekend. So we'll see what all the other investors are saying and what they're seeing in their market and how they're navigating. So maybe I'll have some things to report back next month on kind of insights from all that as well.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a great event. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss it because, you know, I have too many other previous things booked.
Yeah.
But I've heard of everybody going to that event, so I'm sure it's going to be like a blast and a lot to learn from that event. So
yeah, I went last year. It was great the first year. So I'm looking forward to this year. And I have, you know, talked to investors, even newer ones, and they said next year. And I said, for sure. It's like, you know, it's like local investor meetup, but big time, right? You know, like last year I was near a developer that developed all over the world, you know, and was coming and flew in from BC. So, I mean, just the level and magnitude of who you can build connections with and see year over year is huge. So I think that's a kind of a tidbit to provide with all the followers as well, is even if you're new, get out there, because there's nothing more than, I mean, it's hard to level up if you're not working with people who have done more than you.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to get out there, surround yourself with the like-minded people and just learn, absorb, right? Like it's just, especially if you're new, I think.
Yeah. Especially if, I mean, being in small towns or just communities where your parents or your friends or, you know, they don't understand what you're doing, right? They think it's foreign. They think, oh, this is scary. Like, even if you think it doesn't affect you, it does, right? Like, and then just going to these events where people are like-minded, it just kind of gives you that boost you need. And maybe it leads to your next deal, even if it's not someone from there. It just kind of opens your mind to different possibilities, I find, is the biggest takeaway from even getting to your local events, you know, whether they be at restaurants or breweries. Like, get out there, talk to realtors, talk to investors, and kind of just get excited about this again, because it has been a tough few months for people that it's kind of weighing them down. You know, maybe you lost money, maybe you can't find deals. Like you need a new perspective, I find, in the spring market.
Yeah, agreed. Do you guys have those in Sarnia, the real estate groups, or like a little, you know?
Yeah, we do have some. I mean, definitely. And we do have them popping up all the time, you know, like beers at breweries, you know, chats or in the common areas. So they are popping up. I have been to a few of them. But even just, you know, watching these events, you know, like we're hosting now, or, you know, going on Instagram, there's just so much info out there that it's just really great. And you keep following and running into the same people. So, I mean, it's definitely a community. And I mean, no matter what city you go to, you can find them. So I definitely recommend people, like if you're interested in Sarnia, go to a local Sarnia meetup, or go to a bigger event, or reach out in a group like this one, and find your people to connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so great advice. And go to the ones where you feel like like small, you know?
Yes.
Like at some point, like I mean, when I first started, I did all of that. I went to events and stuff like that, and you do end up seeing the same people, the same faces, which is awesome, because then you're learning, and you're learning who's in the industry and who's doing what, and that's amazing way to learn. And then at some point, you kind of begin to grow out of them in a sense, and you want to go to new rooms where you are the smaller fish, and you are learning about other people and what they're doing in those bigger rooms. So definitely keep leveling them up and getting yourself out there, so that you're always learning and taking that action to go to them, right? Because I find a lot of us too, especially the ones when we first start, we're heavy on like YouTube University and like all that, which is really great, but at some point get out too. Get out and do stuff, you know, go.
Yeah, at some part you have to just do, right? It's like there's so many podcasts about anything you want, you know, or books. And it's like you cannot listen to them all. You can focus, and then we need this networking. We need these people, and then just go.
I agree, 100%.
Awesome. Well, it was great talking to you today, Carina, and I hope everyone tunes in again to watch another Sarnia update.
Yes, really great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And we'll see you guys at the next episode. I'm here as your host for the month of May, which is a true pleasure for me to host this channel. And we will see you guys at the next episode. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Bye.